One individual allegedly waited until he was alone with two men with a loaded weapon in his hand and then, allegedly, killed them both. Another individual allegedly plotted for months, perhaps years, with an accomplice, helped construct bombs which blew people to pieces. Both want justice. Both say they're not guilty. Both trials have interesting turns that make one wonder what juries might actually believe. Let us turn the page on our legal books and land where we always do, on the chapter that brings us our legal analyst here on MidPoint from the law offices of O'Brien and Ryan LLP in Philadelphia. Heather Hansen joins us. Heather, nice to see you again. Glad to see you got through the snow.
Great to be here, Ed.
As long as you didn't have to go to Boston, we knew that you would be here on time. And speaking of Boston,
oh my gosh.
I'm with you there. Let's go ahead and go back
Crazy.
to New England now and see what's happening there, specifically with the Dzhokhar Tsarnaev case, the Boston Marathon bombing case. What struck me in the last weekend was several stories that I read where there are people now in the area, in New England, who seem to be gaining a measure of sympathy for him, saying that, well, maybe he was under his brother's tutelage, if you will, and maybe we need to back down. I think that's fascinating to see where this is turning already, even knowing that the evidence completely has not been presented yet.
Ed, you're right that the timing of it is fascinating. I expected this to happen a little bit later in the trial as the defense starts to put on some evidence of the effect that his brother had on him. But to have it happen before any evidence has even started is certainly an indication that that evidence will be strong. Listen, we knew that the brother was pretty much the ringleader and that he was the driving force. What we have yet to hear is how much of an impact that was. And I think we'll hear a lot from psychologists, psychiatrists who will testify to the effect that an older brother can have on a younger brother in this situation.
Is it fair to say that this is exactly what the defense wants? Because the jury pool is, we haven't even picked a jury yet. There's plenty of time for people to spend time on their computers, on television, in radio in the New England area right now. They're hearing a lot of this. They're reading a lot of this. This would seem, the snowstorm at least, to be playing right into the defense's hands.
The defense wants to try to offset the publicity that the prosecution has had in the fact that everyone comes in with this predisposition to say, yes, he's guilty, yes, I believe that he can get the death penalty. So if you can get even some people to focus more on the mitigating factors, the things that make him human, and less on the aggravating factors, the cruelty of the act, the better off you are if you're the defense team. All
right, second trial we need to focus on, and this is, of course, the Chris Kyle trial, the trial of Eddie Ray Routh in Stephenville, Texas. Apparently, Routh now says that the guys didn't talk to him. There seem to be a lot of very confusing statements being made here. And I'm not sure if from the defense's side of things, if you want a lot of these to get out there, because what I'm reading and what I'm hearing a lot of people saying is it still seems to point to premeditation. It seems to point to something more than being insane, especially when people say being drunk and being stoned, as he's alleged to have been at the time, would not necessarily preclude an insanity defense.
Yeah, I mean, the thing the prosecution has to do is to focus on the voluntary intoxication, because the prosecution has a big hurdle here. He was diagnosed with PTSD. He was also given a whole lot of medications that seemed to be sort of overkill for PTSD. He was given medications for schizophrenia, medications for bipolar disorder. What's going to be really fascinating, Ed, is when the defense puts on their case, I think you're going to see a real accusation of the VA system and the fact that Eddie Ray Routh was taken to the VA at least 3 times. He was sent home with all of these medications without any real help. And I think that the defense will focus on that and the fact that he was more than just PTSD to try to get by with this insanity defense.
And the pictures we were seeing here are of Chris Kyle's wife as she was testifying. Got a little bit less than a minute here. The Aaron Hernandez case, so much evidence coming out in this, and I don't know if it's ever a good thing when the woman that you love and the woman, I guess, that you were engaged to is getting state's protection to still testify in the trial.
Yes, I mean, she fascinates me because she's sitting behind him and they've been mouthing "I love you" to one another when he gets in and out of the courtroom, and yet we know she now has an immunity deal. We expect her to testify against him. What used to be just a circumstantial case, and mind you, circumstantial cases are often enough to get a conviction, but now we're adding on testimony from someone like her. It seems to be the nail that will be in Aaron Hernandez's coffin, but you never know.
Yeah, see, that's interesting because a couple of the people that I've spoken to, they said that the way the evidence is being presented, they're afraid even that the state may have lost control of this case and that they might be opening a lot of doors for Hernandez down the road by the time we get there and we get to appeals and so many other things. But we'll have to wait for that because we got to take a break. Hang tight. We'll come back with Heather Hansen. Firefighters refusing to back down on a case involving injuries suffered while doing their job, and the case of one college that refuses to accept Iranians into certain programs. That and so much more when we come back right here on MidPoint. All right, back to work with legal analyst Heather Hansen from the law firm O'Brien and Ryan LLP. Heather, let's get to it on a couple of other cases here that are not maybe as well known. This one came out of Fort Myers, Florida. We saw this. A firefighter who was 50 years of age when he died of cancer that spread from his lungs to his throat. And according to his wife, they go in, the firefighters, they go to a cancer facility and they ask, "Are you a smoker?" When he said, "Well, I'm a firefighter," the doctors all went, "Ah," and they sort of now look at him very differently here. And there's a law presuming that if a firefighter gets cancer, it was likely caused by the job. There's a whole lot going on here as to exactly how someone can diagnose and what a real cause of, in this case, death might be.
Right. So in Florida, it's one of the states that does not make that correlation when it comes to cancer. They allow firefighters certain benefits if they get heart disease, lung problems, and certain communicable diseases. But when it comes to cancer, they don't allow those same benefits. 34 other states do, and Florida firefighters are fighting to have that same benefit extended to them. So what they have to do in order to get this law to pass is create some data, show some data that actually connects the firefighters' cancer to the work that they're doing in these fires.
Apparently, Florida has laws that presume, I guess there's a key word in there, that legally, don't you have to think about this? It presumes firefighters' heart and lung diseases are caused by their profession. So it seems like the state has got to back this up just as well with some hard figures.
And you're correct that the word presume is so important because there are some people, as you can imagine, who are genetically predisposed to different kinds of cancers. And so the state is trying to save money, everybody's looking after the budget, to try to make sure that they're not overpaying for people who would have had these cancers anyway. At the same time, you understand firefighters who are paid to protect us, who should be extended every benefit possible if they get sick as a result of doing so.
There should be something different. You're actually protecting lives. It's not as if you're actually sitting there choosing to breathe in any sort of toxic smoke. It happens because it's part of your job. Here's another one, and we have to go back to New England for this. The University of Massachusetts no longer accepting Iranian nationals studying energy-related fields because of a law Congress enacted in 2012. It comes out of nowhere almost, but it seems like that on essence, on paper, they got it right.
It does seem to come out of nowhere. You're right that it seems they got it right, but they're the only university, except perhaps a university in Vermont, that does this. And what they're saying is that because of this law in 2012 and the way that the DHS has implemented the law, Iranians who come to graduate programs in chemical engineering, regular engineering, computers, cannot be given the ability to go to school because they should not be given these visas. And the idea is that perhaps they're taking this information back to Iran and using it to create nuclear power. The argument on the other side, however, is that the visas are given on a case-by-case basis. And so for the university to just give a straight line, you're not getting in, is too much and it's discriminatory. I expect that we will see some lawsuits come out of this, and I expect that the university is going to have to trim in their policy.
It is called, by the way, the Iran Threat Reduction in Syria Human Rights Act of 2012. Everybody wants to catch it. About a minute left here. A bill pending in California allowing the right to die, but now plaintiffs have filed a lawsuit. What's happening here?
It's great because you see now where people are attacking this issue of right to die from all sides. There's legislation pending in a lot of states. I think there's 5 states right now, including Oregon, that allows for the right to die. Now this California lawsuit is on behalf of some doctors and some patients that say that under the current California law, they could be prosecuted as a felony for assisted suicide. So they're looking for a different definition of the word suicide, and they're arguing under the California Constitution that they have the right to medical privacy.
I get the feeling that the right to die case, that's something else that we're going to be facing here in this country probably, and it's going to explode in the next few years because you can just see it sort of simmering at this point, right?
That's right. No doubt about it. And especially if this passes in California, either through legislation or by the judiciary, I think California will really be a tipping point.
All right. Heather Hansen, always a pleasure to have you on the show. That wonderful scene behind you is nice and blue sky from New York. We'll figure that was taken from another day, knowing the way it's been here in the last couple of weeks.
Little chilly. That's right. It might look nice, but it's awfully chilly.
There you go. Stay warm. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Okay, they make the most perfect bedfellows, those who call the Beltway home and those who make a tradition and a living on trading reputations for laughs. After the break, we'll make good on something so blatantly given short shrift from the Saturday Night Live anniversary special, right here on MidPoint.